Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! Buckle up, this one is long. I was visiting a friend who owns and operates a trailer park. Basically, his house is a main office. A couple had just moved into a lot with their mobile home. The dude seemed fine, and he and his girlfriend had just had their first kid. Well, at 3 a.m., just a few hours after I arrived, the boyfriend showed up at my friend's house, the main office, and apparently he had a DNA test done. And he found out the kid wasn't his. So while the girlfriend was still in the hospital, he started fooling around on her to get back at her. Well, earlier that day, she got released from the hospital, and he refused to go pick her up. So she walked from the hospital to the trailer park, easily 20 miles, and found him with this girl. She went crazy. She started trashing their tiny mobile home while he and his girl quickly opted for the door so that he could drive the mistress back to her place. When he got back, his soon-to-be ex-girlfriend locked him out of their mobile home. So at 3 a.m. he showed up at the front office to call the police. My buddy woke me up, filled me in on a situation, and I went out to his living room to keep the dude company. I explained that if the kid isn't his and he signed the birth certificate, he has 60 days to remove himself from the birth certificate, otherwise he will be on the hook for child support. I also explained that while calling the cops is a good idea, they likely won't be able to remove her from the mobile home since she had established residency. Well, the cops showed up, knocked on the door, and she answered. And the cops just did a welfare check on the kid. They left and he was allowed back into the mobile home by his soon-to-be ex. It would have been nice if that were the end. Nope, not even close. Not even 30 minutes after the cops left, the dude came back up to the main office and said he needed to call the cops again. She stole his car. From what he said, she even tried to run him over before she sped off into the night. Before the cops could get back to the park, she came back and she started doing donuts in my buddy's yard. She ran over his garden and just screwed up his yard in general. She finally stopped about a minute before the police arrived. The cops got out of their cruisers and arrested this chick on the spot. The charge? Misdemeanor malicious mischief. They charged her for ruining my buddy's garden. And that was it. A day passed, and the crazy lady got released on bond. She came back to their mobile home and got right back into it with her soon-to-be ex. During the fight, she started scratching at her throat until she had left a lasting mark. She called the cops, claimed he laid hands on her, and the cops came and arrested him for domestic violence. The cops took the kid and placed him in protective custody. As an aside, I know that she fabricated the "he beat me" story because she bragged about it after the cops left. She even went so far as to call the dude's parents and brag about getting their son locked up. Now my buddy is freaking out. He's got a crazy lady on his property, crazy lady has no income, and she just had their only source of income locked up and subsequently fired for being locked up. There is no way in hell they are going to pay rent anytime soon. He wants her gone, but legally, he has no recourse because they aren't past due on rent. Another day passed and homie was still locked up, and the crazy lady had started throwing all of their belongings into the yard of their lot and partially onto my buddy's property. My buddy told her she needed to clean up her yard by 6 p.m. or he would write up a violation. She ignored him. An hour or so after that, I was helping my buddy move some stacks of bricks in his backyard, which was right next to the lot her boyfriend had rented. And the entire time, she was just talking to herself. She wasn't talking to herself in a normal way. No, she was actually yelling random stuff like, "Minimum wage and they fired me, $10.75 an hour and they fired me, $30K a year and they fired me. Jerks!" Or, "I just want to enjoy my life in peace, but they won't let me. I'll kill them." We decided it would be best not to acknowledge her at all. We stopped working and we went back inside for some lunch. Then we saw the smoke. This crazy witch was piling up her own stuff and lit the pile on fire on my buddy's property, not even on her own lot. My buddy called the cops, who arrived in record time along with the fire department. They arrived to find her with a lighter and a can of gasoline in her hands. She had the water running and she tried to go turn it off, but the cops stopped her. My buddy opted to turn the water off for her, so he went and turned the water off to her mobile home. She screamed her head off at my buddy for doing that, despite the cops telling him to go ahead and do it. The fire department put out the fire and the cops put handcuffs on her and stuffed her into their cruiser. I thought to myself, finally, this crazy witch is getting put away for arson. Nope, the fire marshal refused to come investigate, so it couldn't be classified as arson. The cops wrote her a citation and released her. My buddy told the cops he wanted to press charges for trespassing as she had started the fire on his property. The cops advised that they couldn't because they would need to show intent. She needed to know she was trespassing, in other words. Since there wasn't a clear marker indicating that she was, the cops couldn't arrest her for it. So my buddy told the cops where his property started and asked if the cop would explain that to her so that when she inevitably does trespass again, they will be able to arrest her. The cop agreed and he explained where her property ended and that she was under no circumstances to step foot on my buddy's land. As the cops were leaving, she looked at me and my buddy and said, "You're lucky I don't bash your heads in with my baseball bat," followed quickly by, "I'm going to blow your heads off, jerks." The cops had their windows rolled down, but they did nothing. They just left. An hour passed and we saw the crazy witch standing in the middle of the street, stopping every car that passed. Finally, one of them pulled into the park, parked on my buddy's property and lit her user cell to call the cops. Why was she calling the cops? Well, she tried to get them to come arrest my buddy for turning her water off for her, on police orders. So she was standing on my buddy's property to call the police. He whipped out his phone and recorded her standing on his property. Then he called the cops himself. When they came, she was certainly surprised when they put her in handcuffs immediately. The cop who had responded before, the one who explained to her where her land ended, came over and watched the video my buddy recorded on his cell phone. And then he explained that he would not be arresting her for trespassing. He was going to do an emergency order of detention. Basically, she was going to be forcibly taken to the closest hospital where she would be evaluated briefly and then released. He explained that she would be back out before the day was done. My buddy didn't bother insisting that he wanted to press charges for trespassing. I wondered why, but after the cops left, he called her ex-boyfriend's parents who, as luck would have it, had the only key to the mobile home. It was given to them by the police as it was on their son when he was arrested for domestic violence. They came out and they locked up the RV. My buddy then noticed a water leak coming from the valve, so he turned off the water to the entire park briefly, cut out the section of pipe attached to the valve and capped it off to stop the leak. Lastly, remember how he warned the crazy lady to clean up her yard or she would get a violation? Well, she never cleaned up her yard. Instead, she threw just about everything that was in the RV into the yard. Well, as it turns, in a rental agreement, my buddy cleaned her yard. He took everything that was in the yard, TV, mattress, microwave, and so on, and he hauled it off to the dump. But he wrote out a violation as well as a bill for having to clean her yard. Well, the crazy lady got out a few hours after she was taken in, and she called her ex-boyfriend's parents to try getting a ride. They promptly hung up on her and they immediately called us. We had plans to grill out for dinner and my buddy invited them over for dinner and the show. She arrived after the sun had set and, well, after we had eaten dinner. We were sitting out on my buddy's patio, which had a very clear view of the mobile home. When the crazy lady saw us, she let us know how she really felt. She called us every name in the book. She hadn't gotten to the mobile home yet, and because it was dark, she couldn't even see that her yard had been cleaned. We sat there and took every name she could dish out, and we collectively laughed as we all knew what was about to happen. After she realized we were laughing at her, she hit us with a final, Screw you! Before storming off to the mobile home. As she got closer, she could see that her yard was barren. When she got to the door, she could see the notice attached. When she went to turn the door handle, it wouldn't budge. After a few moments of silence, it finally clicked in her head. She screamed out into the night, "You jerks!" She must have been thirsty after her long walk because she went to the water hose, only to find that it wasn't on. Then she went to turn on the water, only to find that it had been capped off, no valve in sight. My buddy yelled out to her, "Sorry, there was a water leak at the valve. It was a park property. So, I capped it off. I'll have it repaired within the next 2 weeks though." Coincidentally, 2 weeks was the earliest time he could start the eviction process. First, contest and explanation. I work as a surveyor. In this profession, you often have to divide land so that the owner can sell a part of it, or even delimit the entire perimeter or just a part of it. For example, when two neighbors are fighting about where each of their lands end, "Your fence is on my land, no, you're lying," that kind of stuff. Usually, we would do our own research beforehand, and often find some previously existing landmarks, property documents and stuff like that. Then get to the land on a day we appointed everyone concerned. Measure visible limits and landmarks, and if everything is clear enough, establish the limits for everyone with their accord, meaning that you have only one travel on the spot, and the rest is just drawing the plan on a computer and creating legal documents to sign by everyone quoted before. It works perfectly like 95% of the time. And the remaining 5% are either because we made a mistake and need to come back to change the limit with everyone's accord again, or because one of the neighbors doesn't agree with what we determined to be the limit. We want to go to court to have it settled by a judge. And this is between the two neighbors, and we have about nothing to do with it once they decided to go to that extent. Sometimes, though, the limit is not that easy to find, and we have to do it in 2 appointments. First, to measure the land and try to find elements that would help us, then the second to show everyone where the limit is based on our measures. So yeah, it works well, and it's fast enough so that we can pass from one case to the other without losing too much time. But here's the thing, with 2 appointments, clients have to pay more, of course, and our boss liked that. So one day, he decided that rather than doing everything at once when we could, we would systematically do it in 2 appointments. We tried telling him that it was a bad idea as we were already treating every case we had with just no delay. But he didn't listen and made us do it anyway. So we started doing as he said. Every case, even the easiest ones, were treated 2 times. The folders started to pile up on our desks because we had to go to each location a second time. But we also had to attend to the appointments of the new ones, which themselves had to be taken care of a second time, while others were coming and so on. Now, clients are calling angrier and angrier, because they are waiting for our work to be done so that they can sell their lands. The boss came at us angry because he thought we were slacking off, but we just showed him the folders that we have to get treated twice. He tried to argue, claiming that we were just taking too much time, but we reminded him that he was warned this would happen. He got one really angry call from a notary last week, who was about to lose a sale because we didn't work fast enough. At this point, we had months of delay. He then came to us asking to go back to the way we treated our case before, but I know one of my colleagues got really annoyed by his behavior and is actively looking for another job, while we are way behind in many cases. So, I was granted a legal name change a few months ago. Long, boring story as to why. Simply put, hated the unique spelling of my first name and wanted to ditch my surname. Didn't have much trouble updating my name in most places. Social security, driver's license, insurance, yada yada. No bumps in the road until I got to the very last thing to update. My credit card. I use this particular credit card a lot. I'm self-employed and use this card to rack up travel points for flights, hotels, rental cars, and so on. However, if you've ever checked into a hotel or picked up a rental car, you'll know the name on the card must match the name on the ID. So I called the credit card company, told that I have to fill out a certain document and mail that in, alongside a copy of the court document. Fair enough. 2 weeks go by, hear nothing. So I call again. They say they haven't received it. I am then informed they have a fax number that I can use to send in the documentation. So I fax in everything necessary using an app on my phone. Another 2 weeks go by. Still nothing. I called again. Same spiel on the other end of the phone. Please mail or fax. You get the deal. I once more did what they asked. Yet another week passes. I call again. Told the same script. I'm starting to get annoyed by this point. I have an upcoming trip planned and need the card to match my ID. So I asked to speak to a manager. They give me some bullcrap of a manager not being currently available. Anyways, I faxed in the documents and court order once again. However, this time I decided I was just going to keep hitting send after the previous one had shown as delivered. I thought I'd repeat the process a few times just to make sure they got it. After sending it 25 times the first day, I got no response. Next day, I was sitting on my couch watching football. Thought I'd send the fax a few more times, and by the time I realized how many times I'd hit send, I had sent it over 130 times. The very next afternoon, I got a call from a manager at the credit card company. She sounded quite angry over the phone. I just played dumb. Well, you guys asked me to fax it in. I got my updated credit card in the mail 3 days later. I'd also like to mention how painfully easy dealing with Social Security and the DMV were in comparison. For whatever reason, the credit card companies would look at my updated driver's license, Social Security card and court order document, but still not be convinced my name had changed. I understand fraud happens, but come on.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.